on Simo and Goss for breakfast. Coach's Call.
A round of applause for the best moment of the weekend. Thanks to Nutrimate. Get some Nutrimate into your furry, mate. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's go to Daryl from Kingsley, who wants to talk about the Fremantle Dockers. Simo's listening. Good morning.
Good morning, lads. Jess, I just wanted to have a chat. Obviously, it was a better performance yesterday, but I'm still struggling to work out how our forward line functions, and I don't think we kick nowhere near enough of a scoreboard pressure to win games, especially with our forwards. I don't think we try and get our forwards to lead or separate as much, so therefore it gives our midfields and our back line a chop out or a kick into space.
Thank you, Daryl.
Yeah, getting some easy goals would be nice, wouldn't it? It feels like every goal is really it's earned. There's not a lot of clean footy that results in unless it's a fast break from the back half or a kick in set play. That they're going to keep working on just getting 3 or 4 more easy goals that just comes from good bit of skill or a change of angles. Traditionally, get it from clearances. It's they shape their way out of stoppages, and that's probably the cleanest they look. But
there was some nice work when Jackson got it to Brayshaw out through the front, and then on the lead was Tracy. But that's sort of like 1A type football.
Yeah, and we'll talk about them later. But there's a distinct style difference between Sydney and Fremantle yesterday.
All righty, thank you very much, Daryl. That gets things started. Thanks to Nutrimate. Get some Nutrimate into your furry, mate. My round of pause goes quickly to Nick Daicos. It was remarkable. A lot of talk about him and, his fitness and going to America and not doing the pre-season properly, but boy, he bounced back. I saw someone tell me that he got 5 votes in the Coaches Association from one coach and none from the other, from Luke Beveridge.
None from Luke?
Well, I don't know. No one knows which way it went.
No one knows, yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's official,
Sometimes
whether it was just some sort of...
one of them's stubborn.
Craig McRae did a good job. All right, let's go back to the start. And we've touched on this game. We touched on it last week. But Carlton took on Hawthorn. Hawthorn got the job done. Yep. They won by 20 points. The warning signs out for Carlton?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just mention maybe 1 or 2 stats from each game where I think was significant. I was at this game live. It just looked like class. There was a bit of difference. It looked like Carlton did everything they could from a contest, drag them in the trenches. But, minus 26 marks, handball receives minus 36. So in the end, the Hawks got them on the outside and just looked a bit cleaner when it really mattered. And the other thing too is the lack of composure out of the D50 from Carlton is a big concern. There's skill outside of Sard. There's not a lot of skill in their back half.
Barras and Battle working?
It's working well. There's a system there I want to dig into about how they free up a spare down the line. They haven't really played a side that will change angles and just see what they do. Although Sydney do that, and that was round 1. So, yeah, they're working well together, I would have thought.
Footscray took on Collingwood. This game was close all night, of course, and ended up being a 6-point win to the Pies.
Well, we just spoke about Daicos. He gets tagged the first 2 weeks, and he has 39 possessions the third week. And, the first half he had 17 possessions with 184 metres gained, so it was... didn't do a lot, but the second half he did some damage. And he did some damage the way, I've called it early anticipation. When the ball goes the other way, he might just drift forward a little bit from the play, hoping for a turnover. They get the turnover, he's free ahead of the play. It works really well when you get the ball back. They didn't do a lot to stop him. But once again, it's probably just a class thing, a bit like the Hawthorn-Carlton game, where it was just... the extra bit of class. So, good performance by Collingwood. I think the Bulldogs will take a lot out of that game as well. Sam
Darcy, is he the most exciting big man in the game for the future?
I think so. Yeah, look, he looked dangerous then. He played on Moore. Moore hasn't quite hit the same heights. Darcy Moore. So, difficult matchup. He's 207 centimetres, Darcy, with long arms. And so... he knows how to mark it at the highest point. He kicked 4 goals too. He's a legitimate threat, in that front half.
Are the warning bells out there for Essendon? 15-10-100. Adelaide beat them by 10 goals. But would there be a concern from Adelaide that they still conceded 100 points?
A little bit. You don't want to go to a shootout, but look, Essendon's pressure was poor. They're the youngest team in the comp at the moment. So I think you just got to acknowledge when you're young, you're going to struggle defensively at stages. You just switch off. But it didn't look great, did it? Their pressure factor was 1.6. It would probably be the lowest of any team across the competition that round. They just couldn't get the ball back. Uncontested possessions are minus 41. Yeah, it was a concern. The only pleasing thing, I suppose, from an Essendon point of view is they did hit the scoreboard, and without merit, they'd be in a bit of trouble. So, yeah, I thought from an alarm bell's point of view, you put this morning Warner, I would have had Essendon as a bit of an alarm.
Yeah, well done to Edwards, the boy from Swan District's kicked
good.
3 on debut. Yeah, he showed some ticker. He's not very big. He's really slight when you look at him as a key forward.
Kick 3?
Yeah.
I don't think he's a key forward. He should be
third man.
Yeah.
But Adelaide also had 7 or 8 players who kicked multiple goals. That's a good sign of a coach when you've got multiple goal kickers.
There's not one injury on that list, so that's huge to have that. And that's probably 2 out of the last 3 years they've had a pretty good injury profile. Their tools look good up forward. Playing an extra tall in your front half sometimes comes with risk, but they don't get in each other's way, and they're very efficient in front of the play. So, yeah, I think we both had them starting the year well, and it's definitely happened.
It's tracking nicely for the Adelaide Crows, but yes, Essendon is certainly in the news. Port Adelaide took on Richmond. No real surprises here. I actually thought, watching the game, I thought Port Adelaide would win by 100 points literally halfway through the first quarter. I thought this game was going to be over. I thought Richmond stuck to their task really well for a young team. Yeah,
and this is going to happen at Richmond. And Adam spoke in his press conference about, not good enough, not up to standard. But I think coming off... they're not going to win every week, obviously. And it just shows you how bad Carlton were the week before in the second half to let that game go. So professional performance. I mean, they were uncontested possessions. Port Adelaide had 179 more. So that's significant. Handball receives, they had 201 to 93. So complete dominance. But I thought Richmond stuck to their guns, like you said. So... yeah, we'll move on pretty quick from this game. It's probably not the last time I'm going to say it.
Now, Lukosius gets injured, and we've already spoken about that, so he's got the fractured knee cap. When you're a coach and you get this so-called prize recruit, and they got him from the Gold Coast, I don't know where he sits in regards to the elite players in the competition, but you go after him, he's paid big bucks, he comes to your football club, and you're now not going to have him for 12, 18 weeks, whatever it may be. How deflating is that for you as a coach?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, all injuries, doesn't matter who it is. If you lose one of your better players or perceived one of your... I'm not quite sure if he's an A grader. I'm not sure if he's a B grader, to be honest. I haven't really seen him do anything in his short career. So he would have been really keen to start well at a new club, and unfortunately we're not going to see him for, you'd say, close to most of the season if it's a bad one. Upset of the round. Not many people saw this one coming. St Kilda, 15-8, 98 to 13-13. They almost lost it. I was at three-quarter time, they were still 5 goals in front, and I thought, if they go back into their shell and Ross goes into defensive Ross mode, it could prove costly. Well, it almost did, but they hung on to win by 7 points. It's a good win for them. Great, and a little bit like West Coast on the weekend. They jumped them, really, didn't they? So let's look at the first half. They were plus 11 at clearances. They were plus 10 at contested possession around the grounds, plus 68 uncontested possessions, but... it was their pressure that was elite. So they had, pressure factor of 2.8. The tackle efficiency was 81%. So they were ruthless. And Geelong didn't really want to have much to do with it. So, and to Geelong's credit, they worked their way back in and could and would have stolen the game. So, yeah, really good first quarter, first half from the Saints, and a bit like West Coast, we didn't see it coming. We didn't see Bailey Smith not playing either. Yeah, you pumped him up last week. You pumped his tyres up. But Geelong are a bit like that with their injuries. They don't really come clean on their injuries. Are the clubs aware of not giving too much away? Geelong have made an art form of it. Yeah, they are. Why would you not? Probably overplay it a little bit. I mean, you just don't want the opposition to know. That's pretty much it. Like, why would you want to do it? And I know it's for the fans and for people who want to do dream teams, and it's like the last thing on my mind is dream team points or fantasy scores. Or the punt. Or gambling. It's, okay, they're planning for Bailey Smith. They're going to tag him. They've already declared that, St Kilda. They were going to tag him. So right up until the last minute, they're still looking at vision. They're still preparing. And then, we didn't think he was going to play, but we had to prepare for it. That's what you want. Waste some time. St Kilda, I'm preparing for Smith. What time are we talking? How much time are we talking about? How much time would Ross Lyon and his crew have put into Bailey Smith? And it blew up in their face in the end because they lost, but... Yeah, and you don't... So this... you wouldn't do it every player. But if it's a Nat Nui or a McGovern or a Smith where you know teams are going to put time into, I'm talking 3 or 4 hours of prep time from a line coach, a match committee discussion that goes for, are we going to tag this week? Who are we tagging? What happens when he goes forward? What happens if he goes to the wing? Someone's got to... There's a lot of prep. And then you've got to sit with the player and explain, hey, here's the 2 things you need to do. Here's the vision. Go look at all the... he might get... So, yes, mate, there's probably a 5 to 10 hour prep on Bailey Smith. And then if you declare he's not playing on Monday, you go, oh, beautiful. We can just move on to Holmes. So I hope that explains it, but it's not as simple.
You don't think Geelong are doing anything wrong? And you think they're not the only ones to do it?
No, I think it was legit, this one. He might have had a Solis, and you can sort of play with Solises. I used to do TBC a lot, Geelong. To be confirmed? Is that what and that was more for your mid to long-term injuries. So week-to-week ones, you do try and keep things quiet for that very reason. Not with every player, but with the important ones.
And is it a turning point for Kilda? This is Ross. Have a listen to Ross Lyon about the positives.
They threw a lot at us. We knew they'd come. I would have liked a little bit more composure, but I think we take those lessons. So, it was... Everyone says a game of 2 halves, but I think that exists every week, doesn't it? But I think it was contrasting halves is what I would say. So, a lot of positive to take out of it.
Yeah, so there it is, positives, and they get the 4 points and they're on the board beating, and it was at Marvel, and they do play well there. North Melbourne completely dacked Melbourne, 19-11, 125 to 9-12, 66. It was a big day for Jack Darling.
Got up for JD.
Yeah.
They got up for him.
It was a big win. It's a big win for them, and the alarm bells will be enormous, and the story's enormous out of Melbourne today. And we're going to touch on Simon Goodwin later, but with the Max Gawn stuff and all that sort of stuff. But as a game itself, upside for North, downside big for Melbourne.
Yeah, I've heard a bit of rhetoric around North have arrived. I think we just got to pump the brakes a little bit. It was one of their better wins in the last 3 or 4 years, absolutely. But let's wait and see if it's a bit of a pattern before we declare North arriving. And they kicked 7 goals from centre bounces, which that's unheard of, for North Melbourne in particular. If they do that every week, absolutely. But
so that's a goal from a straightaway, a centre bounce, and just whisking it down.
The chain of possessions, unbroken. Where does it come from? It comes from a stoppage, a turnover, or a kick-in, really. So to kick 7 from the middle, that's a great effort, and that got them from 10 points in front to 10 goals. So that's great, but that's not... You can't sustain that. So you got to look at some other numbers to make sure that, okay, we do this every week, we'll win. But to do it against Melbourne, that's a massive tick. So, well done to them. A good effort. And Melbourne, there's obviously still some work to do there.
People were saying the era, if there was such a thing, of them being a force might be over, the Petrarca, Oliver, Gawn era.
Well, I wouldn't jump on that either. Yeah, I wouldn't jump on that either. Let's wait till round 6 before we start declaring eras over or coaches sacked or teams have arrived. Because we've just saw from last week to this week, the jump between wins and losses for teams. It's just all over the shop. So, I think some people in the media trying to grab some headlines around statements is, we've got to get used to it, I suppose.
Look, pleased with the response, but disappointed with the result. I thought we put ourselves in a winnable position. First half was terrific. But unfortunately, just ran out of juice in that last quarter, and their experience, their maturity, just ran over the top of us.
In the end, it was a 19-point win at 14-10-94 to 11-9-75. There's the coach, Andrew McWalter.
Wow, what a great start! Like last week, we were talking about how do we look at the new style of play. I'm keen to see it. If this attacking, aggressive, forward handball, speed of ball movement when the time's right. But you can't do that if you don't win the ball. So I think a couple of positional changes around Baker going on ball was really important. He looked like that transition mid that, perhaps Ruben could have been doing, but he's now playing back. I think Graham was doing it last week, but Baker's got that edge, hasn't he, in the middle? I reckon he started. And Tim Kelly getting his hands on the ball a lot better than the week before. So their senior players stood up early. And some of the younger players just joined in, like Dewar was, or Dewar, I'm calling him Dewar, that's his nickname, had impact early. what the biggest thing in the first half was contested possession. I think they were minus 43 last week against Gold Coast. They were plus 17 at halftime. So that's significant. And scores in the first half, they kicked 5 goals from stoppages. So that's almost a complete flip of the Gold Coast game. So the coaches went to work, get the craft right. Bailey Williams in the ruck was different than Flynn. He doesn't win as many hit-outs, but when he wins them, they're good, as in he can get over the top. He fatigued as the game went. But at halftime, I think there's a lot of positives to show on Monday. Ideally, you want to win, but you've got to start somewhere, and I thought a significant improvement on the week before.
Certainly was. And what about Brisbane? So Brisbane now, again, they start late because they have the premiership, and so their pre-season is a little bit different. They did a good job in Sydney. They then beat West Coast at home. But are there still concerns about their forward line with no Danaher?
Well, at the moment they're winning. This time last year they weren't. Were they not zero? Were they 0-5? No. They won Gather Round and might have been their first win. So they weren't far off. They had a poor start last year. So I would have thought a premiership team, your pre-season is probably 2 or 3 weeks less than everyone else. You're going to be on the back foot. So to answer your question, I don't know. But to just notch some wins, stay competitive, and then, they've still got some players who aren't playing at their best at the moment, look a little bit underdone. They're still scoring though, mate. So it's not all doom and gloom for Brisbane. All
right, going into the Derby. So some positive signs for the West Coast Eagles after their loss. Speaking of the Derby, it was Fremantle who got beaten by 3 points. They led for a lot of the game and couldn't get the job done in the end. As I mentioned, 3 points. Disappointed was Justin Longmuir.
Just disappointed. We had some moments there that we just needed to send the ball to different areas, and I think youngish players getting caught up in moments at the moment, and we need to make sure that in those moments, whilst we would like to score, we need to make sure we're not left vulnerable behind the ball.
It was frustrating. It was a game that was going to take a moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've said this before. You don't want to be number one at something. You want to be top 4 at everything. Because if you're number 1 at something, you can get scouted. You take it away. And, can Fremantle maintain the rage if they don't win the clearances? Because at the moment, clearances are really significant. Every coach would go into the game against Fremantle and say, if you can win the clearance battle, you're in for a good day against Fremantle. So they lost the clearances by 12. They started with the first 15 minutes was turbo, wasn't it? It was just art back. And this propensity to shape your way through trouble with back feed before you go forward. When it comes off, it looks brilliant for Fremantle. When it doesn't come off and that one extra handball turns into a turnover, and it probably just falls into the wrong player rather than the wrong system. But contrasting styles of play, I thought for 2 quarters it became a kick-mark game, and not boring, but it was pretty dour, wasn't it, there? And then 3/4 time it was, all right, who's going to stand up? Who's going to stand up in big moments? And I think from a Fremantle point of view, they're reflecting on that rather than their style of play or other opportunities. I think they're talking more about, this has probably happened 4 out of the last 5 games. We got to a winnable position in the last quarter, and we couldn't maintain we heard Pearce talk about it. We couldn't maintain a 2-goal lead. We weren't comfortable with that. And that's become a little bit of a pattern. So 2 contrasting styles. Don't see this in every game, but Sydney spot kick, change angles, distinct style. They've carried that from last year. So Fremantle, they love the handball. They've had plus 27 handball receives. They still rely on their clearances. So, both teams not in complete order with the style of play, but they're pretty unique styles at the same time.
Shea Bolton?
Look rusty. He gets a mulligan. I think coming in with a new team, it takes a bit of time. He missed a couple of important practice matches with his injury. So he looked pretty good against Melbourne in that game at Mandurah. He'll be better for the run. They're doing the same thing he did at Richmond. So he does a centre bounce and sneaks forward, and Brayshaw comes off the square, sneaks on ball, and you hope you catch the halfback and the mid's out. It works every now and then. Didn't work at all yesterday. I mean, it was scouted really well.
And Dean Cox, thoughts for him? And
he's lost weight. He looks good. He looks good. And I saw him when he claps his hands. Not that good. When he claps his hands together and rubs them, he's in a really good space, and if you ever see him in the box doing that, he's enjoying himself. He used to do it a lot at West Coast, and I've seen him do it a lot with Horse. So really happy for him that he got the win.
That's the coach's call. Thanks to Nutrimate. Get some Nutrimate into your furry, mate, for the shiny coat, healthy teeth and gums, and welcome aboard to the team at Nutrimate.